Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Open Table Adventures. As always, I am your host, Dan the Baker, and we are back today with another episode of Eat This Game. Today, I have two lovely folks with me to talk about their brand new game, Cosmic Century Knights. Why don't you guys take a second to introduce yourselves? Let's start with James.
Hello, heroes. I am James D'Amato. You might recognize my voice from the One Shot Podcast Network. I used to host One Shot. I currently host Campaign Skyjacks, co-host Star Wall with Drew, and I host the Ultimate RPG Podcast. You may have also seen some of my books on shelves at your local bookstores because I write the Ultimate RPG series for Adams Media, an imprint of Simon & Schuster, and those books tend to get around. But of course, we're here for game design work, and currently Drew and I are publishing Cosmic Century Knights with Possible Worlds Games.
Drew?
And hi, I'm Drew Mierzejewski. You may know me from certain things like Skyjacks, Courier's Call on the One Shot Podcast Network, as well as Star Wall, where I co-GM and co-do things with James. And other than that, you can find me on places like Blue Sky at Worlds to Forge, and also at the Bristol Renaissance Fair, where I work most summers.
Perfect. Sounds good. And is the cat going to introduce himself as well?
Yeah. This is Queen Felicia. I'm covered in cats at the moment right now. I apologize. This is Queen Felicia. She likes to be a part of everything. And this is Thea, who is a rascal and a rapscallion, and we love her.
We love to hear it. But yeah, we are here to talk about y'all's new game, Cosmic Century Knights, which the Kickstarter is starting, or has started already. It's going from September 1st to September 31st. Correct? September
26th.
Or September 26th. Okay. So not till the end of September. You only have a few weeks to get this. But why don't you guys take a second and just pitch me Cosmic Century Knights. Tell me about it.
Sure. Cosmic Century Knights is a tabletop role-playing game inspired by kind of vintage anime, JRPGs, and also modern shonen anime tropes. The idea for the game is that you have a basic fantasy world, and 300 years ago in the setting, a massive sword comes down from outer space and sticks the planet through. And as it's landing, it ejects 100 magical swords all over the world, and your character is someone who has found one of these blades, making them a Century Knight. So it is fantasy adventure that is unrestricted by some of the tropes that we might find familiar in the fantasy games that we sit down to play every week right now.
It's a gorgeous looking game from what I've seen so far. All the art for it is amazing. It's a very fun, from what I've read, very fun sounding game. And I can't wait to play it, which James is going to be running a one-shot for us here on Open Table Adventures soon, so keep an eye out for that. But to get right into it, you kind of started talking about it, your inspirations for the game. What, you talked specifically about like JRPGs and anime and stuff like that. What are there specific instances of those that inspired you, or was it more just like the general vibe?
So it is, for me, a very specific type of cultural exchange. Most of the JRPGs and like very early fantasy anime that came out from creators who had, when, probably like 20 to 15 years earlier, they had read the first translations of Western fantasy stories being translated into Japanese. And also pretty recently in that history, D&D had been translated into Japanese. So you had all of these wonderfully creative people who suddenly got introduced to tropes that were very different from what they were used to. And also got introduced to this new type of gaming. And what they did is they invented their own thing. We're very used to people seeing like Dungeons and Dragons and being like, well, I want to make a game that's exactly like that. and they sort of go through the process of making something that very much fits in the vein of like the current fantasy oeuvre. But with JRPGs, if you look at Final Fantasy, if you look at Dragon Quest, and even if you look at Record of Lodoss War, which is an anime that literally is based on somebody's D&D campaign, they took some of these tropes, these familiar tropes, and they made something completely their own with it. They weren't showing you, oh, this is D&D. They were showing you, this is how D&D made me feel. And like, I, speaking for myself, absolutely adored that. And so what I was trying in my part of Cosmic Century Nights was to explain how those JRPGs, those like older fantasy animes, how they make me feel, and give people the tools they need to talk through those feelings through creation so that the end result is something that feels weird and unique and rolled up in your own influences in a way. Drew, I know that you had a lot more experience with JRPGs than I did, because like you brought the Chrono Trigger influence.
Oh yeah, can definitely see that in this.
Yeah. I grew up. Yeah, absolutely. I grew up loving JRPGs. Final Fantasy at the time 3, Final Fantasy 2, which are 4 and 6 respectively. I played Chrono Trigger. I played all of those games growing up. I was raised in Japan. I grew up there, and I spent my whole life there. I mean, I was like second grade when the Cell Saga was coming out on DBZ, on Dragon Ball Z, and I was watching it every week with my friends, not understanding a word, but watching it and thinking, what do you think is going on? But we loved it. We loved all those tropes, and we loved all the imagination that kind of came out of it. And I was really excited when me and James started up this game. We had this opportunity to bring so much of those tropes that we love, and so much of that creativity that is in kind of JRPGs, but also in anime in general, and to this game. And so there's a lot of that baked into, built on the foundation of James talking about those TTRPGs in Japan from the 80s and 90s, and just building on top of that all of our favorite tropes, all of our favorite themes, and throwing them all at a wall and letting them turn into something really fun and beautiful.
Yeah, when we talk about the modern influences on it, one of the things that I really appreciate about some of the most popular animes, or shonens that are coming out from Japan, is how truly bizarre some of the heroic characters are allowed to be. Their power sets, like this is very clear in My Hero Academia. You get to see it a little bit in Naruto. Like, their powers are so specific and weird. And there is a part where you're watching when they're first introduced, you're like, how could that ever be useful? And
then they show you.
And so we wanted to, through the game, create something where we're giving people building blocks, where your initial thing might be, how could this ever be useful? And then you get to see how through various combinations or creative ideas, people turn these seemingly innocuous abilities into something really incredible. So through the system, we really wanted to support the idea that there could be just a very small creative spark that leads you to inventing something that is wholly your own, but still fits into the kind of emotional framework that you feel when you're watching a really good anime, or when you're playing a JRPG that's kind of blowing your mind while you're playing it.
Totally, yeah. You started talking about a little bit. I would love to touch on, because you were talking about like the character creation in the game, kind of now moving into the actual gameplay of Cosmic Century Nights. The character creation, like you create your own sword, you create your like backstory and like everything through a series of like roll tables.
Yes.
You want to? Why don't you go ahead and just describe that, like what the character creation process is like?
Yeah, so the character creation process is split into like two big activities involving tables. One is assigning aspects to your character, and these are through a series of D20 or 20 sized like rolling tables, and half of it is about your knight and what your knight is like, the person who holds the sword, and the other half is the sword itself. And when I was like going through this is when I tagged in Drew, because Drew breathes and lives swords. He knows real life like sword techniques and does stage combat and also has an impressive collection of his own. And I want, when people are creating characters, to feel like the romance that you feel when you're looking at a sword that you would like to own. So Drew and I tried to break down like what are some compelling anchors that we can provide people in character creation. And so between the aspects of the blade and the aspects of the knight, you create something that has no mechanical effect, but is all about the story built around the character.
Totally, yeah. Drew, do you want to touch on talking about just like the swords and stuff? What was the, I guess, your process for like thinking of these different aspects? Like, how did you come up with all of them? Are we all good? Are we all?
Yeah, I think we're all good.
I think we're all good.
Okay. So then, yeah, we were talking about the character creation, and I was asking Drew specifically.
That's right.
So yeah, what were your what was your process like with your like sword knowledge? How did you apply that to this process and creating the tables?
Yeah, one of the things I think is really fun and interesting in this game in particular is your sword is so much of a character. It's the thing that catapults you into your knightdom. And so when we were creating these swords, we wanted them to have this feeling of a character that's with you, almost like a companion. So each sword it's got like a different profile, a different use. There's 2 hands, 1 hands, bunch of different ideas about swords, and also themes around them, where they come from, who had them before. Somebody did, maybe somebody didn't. And so they come with history and themes and looks and powers, and they kind of, like I said, are a companion to you as you begin your adventure. And that's really where we came from with this, is we wanted that sword to be really cool and really interesting, and also different. Everybody gets a different sword. I don't think in all the playtests we've done, I don't think anybody's gotten the same sword.
I think it would be mathematically
impossible.
Yeah, very near to impossible. And
there's so many options. We're gonna scroll some of the options just up the screen as we're talking, just so it'll take up forever.
One of the things that I definitely want to touch on, because it has absolutely come up in the play tests and the demos that we've been doing. Drew really, I could not have written the sword styles without Drew. And one of the cool things in the style, which is of the aspects, it is more or less the silhouette of your sword. It is the type of sword that it is. And each one Drew linked with like examples that exist across a couple different cultures. So when we're reading off the list of these options, like I know just last night on one of the streams that we did showing off the game, Sharang Biswas was there. He's an esteemed game designer and professor, and was like, oh, I want this sword because it has an Indian variant. So he like immediately gravitated towards that. And I think there is something very evocative about swords, like just there's a way that a particular type of blade finds its way into your heart and imagination, and being able to connect the audience with that, because it's a very sword forward game, getting you in touch with that part of yourself that's like, yeah, I just want to hold a cool sword and do cool things.
No, there is, I think, it's not even like an inner child thing. I think it's just like within at least people who are in the tabletop, space and like the fantasy space, they're just like, yeah, a cool sword, me wielding a cool sword is like my dream, like if I could just have a fucking huge sword with magic powers, my life would be great,
It would fix me. Yeah.
It would fix everything. Yeah.
I would stop going to therapy if I had a sword. We're cutting that.
But after the aspects, which are all story based, they all add aesthetics and history and things that make you excited about your character. The real mechanics of character creation and where characters start to become distinct is each blade has 3 blessings on it: a minor blessing, a major blessing, and a miraculous blessing. And because there are 100 different magical blades in the game, that means we needed 300 total possible blessings for each sword in the game. So Drew and I, over a grueling set of months, racked our brains for different things that these swords could do.
In hindsight, I don't know how we did it.
Yeah, and we had the challenge on top of you're just trying to come up with abilities for it. The miraculous abilities in particular is each one has to feel like it is slightly game breaking. A power that is so good that when a player reads it, they go, God, am I allowed to have this? This feels wrong. And so we really, really had to dig deep for things that would be their own character story just based on the power. If you have this one power, it defines a huge part of what your character can do, what their story is. The major blessings kind of feel that way as well, because unlike a world like D&D, where magic kind of feels common, you can crack open that monster manual and a good third of the creatures in there can do the same abilities that you have as a PC. If you find a sword that lights on fire, you are the only person who has that sword. Whenever we assign these abilities in the game, we literally will check them off in the book, and nobody else will be able to roll that ability for their character.
That uniqueness is something that I really love, in a tabletop game it is very that's main character. It is also, it's very anime as well, even what you're talking about with the world world breaking blessings. There's that one character who's I'm at 100% power, and it's the world is blowing up. It's Donald Duck casting Zeta Flare in Kingdom Hearts 3. That's just a fun image to have as a player, for sure.
It's so funny that you bring up Donald Duck. That's a fully possible
absolutely
character to roll up in this. It is not that hard.
I would love to touch on also just what does a session of this game look like? How is it run? What is the what is just the general vibe you would go walking into a session of Cosmic Century Nights?
Well, Drew, I'd say it's a fairly trad game, right?
It's very traditional, I would say. You're going to step in and you're going to create everything that you usually do. You're going to create your character, your swords, all that fun stuff. And it is very narrative based. We made it in such a way that it's very I hesitate to say rules light, but it is narrative heavy.
We tried to make the rules flexible, as specific as those powers get, and we try to define the rules for the powers in a way that make it clear what they are supposed to do, but that leaves a lot of open blank spaces of what they can do.
Mhm.
It's hard to say what a typical session looks like, because the other big thing, apart from creating your character in the game that you create, is your antagonist. The book is going to come out with 3 different antagonist groups. There is the Star Conquerors, which is like a spacefaring empire that wants to take over your planet. There is the Blight Labyrinth, which is a parasitic extra-dimensional space that is like a dungeon dimension. It spawns doorways all over the world and tries to tempt people inside so it can digest them. And then there are the Fell Knights, which are people who have sentry blades like the PCs, but they use them for nefarious purposes. And each of these antagonists is heavily customizable and kind of intended for the PCs, the players, to be customizing the antagonist along with the game master. So everybody's game of Cosmic Century Knights is going to look very different. The Star Conquerors in particular, they can range from being almost like another fantasy kingdom that happens to be, going through space, to alien xenomorph colonies, to like eldritch horror mushrooms from beyond our dimension. It is a really wide range. So in terms of what you're doing, you are going to be, as players, defining how the world that you're in, which you kind of built up as you built your characters, is under attack. And all of your characters have things that they're interested in, things that they want to defend. So what you're doing session to session is going to depend pretty heavily on what antagonist you've set against your group.
Totally, yeah. I love that, just how much storytelling power the players have. Because there's plenty of TTRPGs where it kind of all lays on the game master and the players are just kind of along for the ride. I, as a game master, usually ignore that and kind of give my players a bit more power, but you guys really bake that in there. Like, everyone kind of has their hand in the pie a little bit.
It's kind of how we've been running games for the past several years.
Yeah, it's, James and I come from, the actual play space. And the way that we run our games is we run it very, what do you think? What do you see? What's happening here? Give us details on the room and what's happening.
Paint a picture,
give us the picture, and then James and I are just like improvising wildly by the seat of our pants as we go, and we have brought that to this game. And I think that is something you don't really see in the space right now, is a game that is specifically made to have the table where everybody's collaborating, everybody's involved in a really narrative forward space.
Yeah, especially one that like stays traditional in terms of some of the ways the mechanics are presenting each other. So this is very much a game that's concerned about hit points. There's a lot of inspiration that we definitely took in terms of design, especially world building design, from Powered by the Apocalypse games. But those live just in storytelling spaces. Most of the moves that you're doing there have big narrative consequences, where narrative consequences in a trad game, that's something that we're extrapolating from the mechanics. And in some ways, I know that I've played with people who will see these story forward games and feel kind of restricted or stifled. So we tried to design something that has the overwhelming freeing power that we see people take on when they sit at one of our tables, and every decision they make is part of a collaboration with us, and they have a lot of agency over the world itself. And the sort of traditional division of mechanics where you are rolling to see if you succeed or fail at things. And that's the main thing that the engine lays on top of you.
Yeah, it does truly. It feels like a good mix of those traditional classic, kind of like OSR adjacent styles to the more modern narrative heavy games like Powered by the Apocalypse and stuff like that. Yeah.
And there's probably a decent amount of shared DNA with OSR. I have played scarce few OSR games. And the kind of like meat grinder funnel system that's really popular with OSR has never really vibed with me. But I cannot deny that this is a game full of random tables where swords are extremely important. So it's there. There's definitely a relationship there, but this is how somebody who is very improvisational, who is very story focused, and likes to put more agency in the hands of the players and have fewer divisions between like player and GM would approach some of the like mechanics that you see popular within an OSR scene.
It has a little bit for everyone, you know.
You're still worried about distance and defense and hit points and how you can do these things mechanically, but you know, it is a good mixture of those two, I feel, and I think that's really exciting. It's really fun.
I'd love to ask you, just because of the DNA of this show, how does food and like meals and eating, does that play a role at all in this game?
It's an interesting question, and I was like flipping through the rule book when I was thinking about it, because you were kind enough to let us know about that one beforehand. It's one of the world building questions that we have.
We have a ton of world building questions about food, but also resources are like the stat of resources inside of it.
Oh yeah, sustenance is like one of the one of the things that you define about the Star Conquerors, like what they need to eat and reproduce. So that's a big part of it. And I know that the rest system, there are 3 different kinds of like break that you can take to quickly restore some of your resources during the game. That system does anticipate on the longer rests that you might be having a meal, so that gets incorporated to it as well. But like the real anchor is the 20 questions that we came up with for you to roll like at the outset, right as your beginning of the game. One of them is like what is the most popular like type of food and drink in this setting, and I know in a recent Cosmic Century nights that I ran, like people were like, oh yeah, you can eat the clouds are like fluffy mushroom things, and I'm like,
love that.
Awesome,
that's great. That's awesome. I love that.
Great, cool. I think that's like, it is something that I think oft goes a little looked over in tabletop games, like, because for the most part, people don't want to be, talking about like, yes, we sit down and make a meal and eat and like, things like that. They want to just kind of get into the adventure. I love just like you're all sitting around eating at the campfire. What stories do you tell each other? That kind of thing. Like that's a thing. And I feel like that's something that you could definitely have with this game for sure. One more question, food-related question I have for you, which I also prepared for you that you may not have an answer for, but if you were to just take a bite out of this game, what do you think it would taste like? What kind of texture would it have? What flavors?
That's a very good question. I'll go first. I think it tastes like it's a buffet. I think that it's a buffet plate where you've gotten a little bit of everything. You go to that big Vegas buffet and you got spare ribs, and you also have a cupcake, and you also have a salad, and you also have you have Asian flavors and Italian flavors and Mexican flavors and tons of different flavors inside of all that, and you're taking bites from that plate and having a wild time going to different places with every bite. And I feel like that is kind of the taste of this game, is that it is, you choose from that buffet and you get to have that meal that you'd like, and it's going to take you to wild places, and that's what's so fun.
It's like
I love that answer.
Yeah, it's like the Willy Wonka gum that
it's
like a 3-course meal or whatever. Yeah.
For me, I was like thinking of like what is the meal experience of this game, and I thought of like, especially with the wonderful art that we've gotten from Baptiste, the artist on this book, and Ben, our cover artist. Everything is so vibrant, and there are a lot of pastels in this game, which is not something that you get to see from a lot of tabletop role-playing games. And I couldn't help but think of like an extremely Instagrammable dessert. I want, something with different layers and different colors. And because, again, the core exploration of this game, I think, is in cultural exchange, I thought of a New York style cheesecake that has a matcha layer and an ube layer and a plain cheesecake layer. So you've got these 3 different colors in there. They're incorporating flavors from different cultures and like a style from a city that is like kind of notorious for blending different cultures. And it is heavy and beautiful, and there's a lot to discover in kind of every bite.
That's great. Now I want cheesecake. And I live in New York City, so I can go and get one. Not that you can't.
We're never going to be able to find cheesecake here.
Not
in
here.
Chicago.
Not that you can't get cheesecake elsewhere, but you know what I mean. So great. Okay. I think, with all that being said, I think I have a good idea of what I'm going to be making. Okay, so for these Cosmic Century Brownies, I'm making my classic brownie recipe, but I have a couple little extra tidbits that I'm going to be adding in that we are going to be figuring out what it's going to be by rolling on a table. In the spirit of Cosmic Century Nights, where there are a plethora of tables for you to roll on to figure out what character you're going to be playing. I went ahead and rolled on the table, and I rolled my D20, D12, and D8, meaning that we are going to be using red bean paste, soda, and mascarpone cheese in these brownies. Here's how I did it. So I started by taking some of my soda, putting it in a pot and simmering it on a low heat for a very long time until it reduced to about 1/4 cup. This took a very long time, and I had to keep my eye on it because I didn't want it to burn. Because if it burned, then I didn't want to go out and get more soda. And then for the red bean paste, I blended up my red beans a little bit just to make them a bit smoother. And then I added them in with some milk chocolate chips and poured some hot, heavy cream over them, stirring until they emulsified into one big, fun ganache. I poured that into another container and stuck it in my freezer to set. And then I took my softened butter, the syrup we created from the soda, and a little bit of sugar, and creamed them until it was light and fluffy. I then added in a bit of melted dark chocolate, mixed it up a little bit more, as well as 2 eggs and some vanilla. And that's where we are right now, so we're gonna keep going. I'm gonna add in 1/2 cup of flour. I want these to be super dense and fudgy, so I don't want to add too much flour. The more flour you add in, the more cakey it becomes. I'm going to add in some salt, as much as I desire, and 1/4 cup of cocoa powder. Mix that all up. Before the flour is all the way mixed in, I'm going to add in 1/2 cup of milk chocolate chips as well. And then finish mixing until it's all smooth. And I'm just going to pour it into my prepared pan. I just sprayed it with a little bit of pan spray so these brownies don't stick. These are super dense and fudgy, so they do want to stick to the pan a lot. Make sure it gets nice and even throughout the pan. I originally planned to do something different with this red bean ganache, but it came out, it's still very liquidy, and I don't feel like waiting for it to set up further. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pour the whole thing on top of the brownies. And I'm going to take a little chopstick and swirl the ganache into the brownies. I'm going to take this and put it in our oven, which is set to 350 degrees for about 20 minutes. Okay, the brownies are out of the oven and cooling. While they cool, I'm going to make the mascarpone ganache that is going on top. To do that, I'm going to take half a cup of heavy whipping cream and a half a cup of dark chocolate chips and heat these up in the microwave for about a minute. Now I'm just going to mix it up until all combined. I'm just going to pour it into a separate bowl to make it a bit easier. I'm going to mix this just a little bit more just to cool it down a bit because I don't want it to be too piping hot when I add in the mascarpone. Now I'm going to add in a half a cup of mascarpone cheese and mix them all together. I'm also going to add just a touch, like half a teaspoon of salt and but a whisper of sugar. Just add a little bit extra sweetness since we have that dark chocolate bitterness going on there. And I want to continue mixing until there's absolutely no streaks. And I'm going to pour this ganache just right on top of my cooled brownies. Just spread it evenly across the top until it's all one big layer. Now, I couldn't call this a cosmic brownie if I didn't have sprinkles, but I decided to up the fanciness level a little bit, and so I'm going to be using silver dragées. These are just, fancy sprinkles that I'll just sprinkle on top, make it look nice and sparkly. And I want to do this while the top ganache is still wet so that it kind of sticks to it. And the good thing about these dragées, as opposed to like colored sprinkles, is these don't bleed in like liquid, so they won't, like, their color won't run. You won't have like little silver streaks throughout. So I'm going to put this in the fridge to set just a little bit longer. Once the ganache is set, I'll take it out, cut it, and I'll see you for some glamour shots. And there you have it, folks, our randomly rolled Cosmic Century brownies with mascarpone, soda, and red bean paste. If you make these brownies yourself, roll something else on the table. Do something else. Have fun with it. Make an adventure. Let's hear it one more time for the creators of Cosmic Century Nights, Drew and James.
All right, well, I have been James D'Amato. If you want to find me, the best place is Blue Sky, where I am at One Shot RPG.
And I've been Drew Mierzejewski, and the best place you can find me is on Blue Sky at Worlds to Forge.
And if you are looking to back Cosmic Century Nights on Kickstarter, it is live now. It's going to be up September 2nd through the 30th. And Cosmic Century Nights is not alone. We are doing this as part of a party. When you go to that page, you're going to be able to support and get Cosmic Century Nights, but you'll also be able to get Homecoming by Megan Cross. And if you get both of those games, they're also throwing in Tyler Crumrin's Chuck for free. Homecoming is a very heady and emotional game about somebody returning home to investigate their mother's death. It has like descended from the Queen style mechanics in cards with like really beautiful and loaded prompts in them. There is a good mix of like investigating emotions about like relationships, but also investigating a real mystery that is unfolding in front of you. And Chuck is kind of more beer and pretzels game about your partner, your romantic partner. One day you wake up and they are extremely small. And you are rolling to see whether or not they want to go out of the house and what kind of problems that causes you. It's an extremely fun and adorable game. And I love that we are presenting these games together. I think any single one of them is going to be a great experience on its own. But together, first of all, it's a great deal. And secondly, you are just going to have so much fun at home if you decide to go for all three. It is $30 for Cosmic Century Nights, also $30 for Homecoming. And if you get them together, it is $60, and you get Chuck for free.
All the links for Drew and James, as well as the Kickstarter for Cosmic Century Nights, will be in the description below. But make sure you guys stick around here at Open Table Adventures, where we'll have more recipes, actual plays, interviews, and so much more. So as always, I have been Dan the Baker. This has been Open Table Adventures, and you are always welcome to pull up a seat. Bye-bye.